Prescott. Yeah, I worked with all the development community. Tim, I don't really, there's another Tim, Fletcher, I can't, he looks like him, but you know, like I say, I don't remember him with the beard. And everybody fills out a little bit more. No, I don't know him. Okay. I don't know him.
This one is the scratchy.
Looks pretty easy tonight.
I usually face it because I think
That's been, those type of things have been developed over years. As to,
I think
it's like where I'm at right now. We're gonna get wheeled out there.
I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of October 3rd, 2017 of the Chino Valley Planning and Zoning Commission. Mr. Bacon, Commissioner Bacon, would you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. One thing, Commissioner Baker will be here. He's just going to be a few minutes late. So want to make sure that that's in the record.
Okay. Commissioner Armstrong,
Here.
Commissioner Welker,
There.
Commissioner Bacon,
Present?
Commissioner Van Woffen. Here. Commissioner Baker.
Soon to come.
Soon to come. Vice Chair Paziak
Here.
and Chair Merritt.
Here. Okay, we'll start with item 4A. Consideration of possible action to reconsider the approval of the August 1st, 2017 minutes. We have a report from the staff here. Would somebody like to visit with us about that?
All right, let's see. At your last meeting, you all voted to approve those minutes with a clarification to change neighbors, referring to neighbors to the east, to be neighbor singular, and we were able to make that change. And to clarify that the commission did not want to set a standard for dust control on flag lots. Whenever somebody asks to make a change to the minutes like that, where we're actually changing a description of the discussion, we go back and listen to the tape to make sure that what was requested was actually in there, or that we can make the right change. So we went back and we look at it, and while several people themselves made mention of that, there was no specific or definitive statement to that effect. What we found was that 2 commissioners agreed that requiring dust control could be cost prohibitive for the property owner, and then another stated that he was not suggesting that approval be conditioned upon requiring dust control. He just asked about it because a neighbor had brought it up. So what we need to do in that case then is bring the minutes back for you to approve with the changes that we did make, and then leaving the other as is.
Okay, so you're wanting us to amend the minutes by changing the words the word neighbor to neighbor, neighbors to neighbor, and then changing the statement to some commissioners preferred not to set standards for dust control on the flag
Right, and you need
lots.
to rescind the approval that you did at the last meeting. So you need to rescind the minutes that you approved in September, and then approve them again with the amendment as is written down there, that the word neighbors be neighbor, and to add the statement that some commissioners preferred.
Is that all clear to everybody here?
Clear as mud, right?
No, it's clear. It's clear.
Anybody have any issues with that? Okay, any discussion? Entertain a motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carried. Okay, item 4B, consideration of possible action to approve September 5th, 2017 minutes. Anybody have any questions? Welcome, Commissioner Bacon, or Commissioner Baker. We were prepared for you.
Thank you. One of the fun things about getting old is hearing aids. When you forget them, you're lost.
What'd you say?
Yeah.
But
Does anybody have any questions or issues with the minutes as written? Any discussion on it? Claude, we're at the item 4B where we're considering approving the September 5th, 2017 minutes. Do you have any issue with any of that?
I've read them, I'm fine.
Might speak into the microphone there. I don't know if your mic's on or not.
No, I've read the minutes and I approved them.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, before you go to the motion, I will need to abstain because I was not at that meeting.
Okay, we have one abstention.
I move that we accept the minutes of the September 5th, 2017 meeting.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we have a noted abstention. All right. Moving on to item 5, staff reports.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. I'm pulling up the PowerPoint right now for the item related to the Chino Valley Town Center PAD. Just give me 1 second. It's not opening up. It's a little slow. Here we go. Perfect. I do have a staff report. All right. Perfect. Thank you. All right. We're bringing before you tonight the project known as the Town Center PAD. You may recall this item was before you 2 months ago for a study session, in which time we did review the project. The applicant, Mr. Fletcher, has been involved with this property for well over 10 years. As you can see in the report, the property was originally zoned like commercial back in the mid-2000s with the intention of developing a shopping center, hotel, and 300-unit apartment complex. Since that time, he's tried marketing this property through the years for those purposes or for those uses. He was successful, as you well know, in developing the Days Inn as well as the bank facility. The remainder of the property is vacant. And the portion of the property related to tonight's request I'll show you in the next few exhibits. So the original town center property included those parcels immediately east of 89 with frontage on 89 extending all the way south to the bank. That portion of property that is shown as still vacant there is not a part of this application, and so it's still subject to typical commercial light development. He may or may not come forward in the future with a change of plans for that, but at this time it's not a part. The subject property is that listed in the, or shown in the hatched yellow line, and it's about 25 acres of the original PAD. His request is now to do a planned area development overlay on that to allow several uses, which I'll outline as follows. This is the property description again over on the right. As I said, it's about 25 acres. And these are the surrounding zoning districts. So he already has the underlying commercial light zoning, so it's not a rezoning to commercial light, it's simply to add the planned area development overlay. He already has the existing zoning entitlement for his planned area development, or his development from his prior approval 10 years ago. What he'd like to do now, and this concept is probably still pretty fresh in your minds from the similar project that Mr. Fletcher just had taken through to council for West Meadows, is he'd like to do another age-restricted, that is 55-plus active adult community, which will include ancillary land uses as well as an RV park, assisted living facilities, and recreational amenities. This would be a park model project, approximately 240 units of park models, and the RV park portion would be an additional 25 units. That would give you a total of 265 potential units on the site, which is a reduction in density of 35 units from the existing apartment approval that's already on the property. In addition to this, now that it's become somewhat of a master planned, more residential community, he is proposing, as has been requested by P&Z and Council and prior similar denser community developments, identified community resources such as park space and amenities such as what he's providing here. They're going to have small meeting rooms, a craft shop, a swimming pool, tennis and or pickleball courts, some outdoor picnic and seating, gardens, and a dog park. The idea being here that as you transfer density, if you don't have large lots, typically residents seek to have community amenities in which they share space together rather than just live on a large lot. This is also providing housing choice that the town doesn't currently have. We are just recently approved the West Meadows PAD, which was the park model concept. This would be not only park models, but with all of these other uses, as you could imagine, as people approach retirement age and want to live in a community perhaps on a smaller kind of turnkey basis, they would also have, should their health deteriorate with age or otherwise, they would have assisted living on site too. So if they could migrate, if they needed to, into the assisted living facility from the park model community. The property already has existing utilities. There are lines running directly through the middle of it. Prescott Water would serve this site. As well, the town of Chino Valley's sewer line runs right through this site. Mr. Fletcher, as part of his development agreement back in the 2000s, agreed to do about $500,000 worth of infrastructure improvements which have been completed. If you've had the chance to visit the site, you'll see the loop roads are in place, the fire hydrants, the sewer, the water, and quite a bit of the drainage as well. He did receive a retail sales tax reimbursement of about $140,000 towards those $500,000 in improvements through more or less the retail sales tax rebates off of the Days Inn. Again, a recap of the recent project history. The original ordinance listed up in 2004. He's platted the property in 2007. And through the last months, you can see he started his application back in February of this year and is finally making it to this meeting. Our study session was on August 1st. We also presented the item to the town council at a special study session on August 8th to as well give them the preview of the property, give them some additional time to consider before it's brought back to them for a hearing. Mr. Fletcher held the neighborhood meeting at the town hall building on September 11th of this month, or last month, and about 12 property owners did show up. They were curious as to the time frame of the development. As well, many of them were interested in seeing a wall located on the east side of this development to mitigate noise, access to the properties, and visibility. You'll note in the end of your this presentation, we are recommending, should you move to recommend approval to the town council, the addition of that condition, and that would be to ensure that a 6-foot wall is placed on the property line. Further, Mr. Fletcher updated his development plan to actually depict a 6-foot screen wall along the eastern property line, so the neighbors can be assured that he has listened to their request. And ultimately, this brings us back to the staff recommendation at this time, considering that the property is already approved for 300 units. The consideration of density really wasn't an issue for staff. Reducing density down to 265 from 300 may alleviate some concerns on the property being too dense. Further, we did consider the offset in retail sales tax that we would have received from a much larger shopping center. In the case of this development, these rental spaces will generate rental tax to the town of Chino Valley. So everything's not foregone in that respect, although it's not really a land use consideration. It is a broader consideration of the town when considering a change. And we wanted you to know that staff has evaluated that as well. So with all that said, and based on the quality of the plan, the open space, the amenities, and the relative balance of land uses that we were impressed with, staff is recommending approval for the change in zoning to light commercial with planned area development overlay, with the single condition there, as well as any other typical conditions that would be put on the zoning ordinance that goes to council.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions for Jason when he's up there?
I have one question. Will a traffic impact analysis be required?
A traffic impact analysis was not required for the zoning effort. As we go into the site planning process, Frank, our new public works director, may require a traffic impact study. Considering that the proposed traffic on the property is likely going to be slightly less due to the decrease in the number of units, we don't anticipate an uptick in traffic, if you will. So he'll evaluate that consideration then And as well, the property's circulation and access points to SR 89 are already predetermined, and the right deceleration lane is in place. I don't know if you've ever accidentally tried to take that right turn lane into nowhere, but it's already in place for connection to the development.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do have one question, and it may not be pertinent right now, but do we know how many beds are going to be in the assisted living facility?
Commissioner Wolfen, I don't believe we have that information yet. I think
Okay.
it's designated as a land use, and we'd have to get to the bed count at the site plan level.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jason, at the August 1st meeting, I know another commissioner had a question on the open space. Can you tell me how that's changed in the amenities from the first plan? that was
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioner Bacon. The amenities listed in the, well, we kind of had a twofold discussion. One, the location of the amenities prior to coming forward to you at study session was in a different location. We worked with Mr. Fletcher to move it to a centralized portion of the development, so it's not only visibly more accessible, so when you come into your community, you see the open space, which is typically more attractive, but he added additional programming, as I outlined. I'm not certain how well you can see it on the development plan. I know it can be quite tiny on the font, but he will have a clubhouse in the community park that's just over an acre in size to serve this development for both the RV spaces as well as the park model units. As what I've also been told is the assisted living residents will have access to that space too, should they need it. But the actual listing of amenities, I'm not aware that he's made any changes since the August 1st study session.
So these have been moved since the last meeting, or they're still in the same place on the site plan?
They're in the new and improved location that you saw already on August 1st.
Okay.
The project's been evolving since February, so we tried to get it up to speed for you on August 1st. Is it? I didn't see it. Something crazy. Oh, I didn't recognize the abbreviation. We're gonna pull up the development plan so it's a little bit clearer. And then full screen it, right? Okay. This may help. You can see it here. So Fletcher Court, of course, is existing, comes in and dead ends as you get to Johnson Farm Lane. And then the utility lines, as you can see, are going to exist underneath the future drive aisle of this development, but they're already in place. So that's why the land planning has been done around that. Some pretty major lines in place there. And this will be the park space right here. And additionally, there'll be green buffering around. This is actually a community trail. So the units will not be sitting right on the property line. There'll be a green space between them, and then there'll be a property line wall as requested by the neighbors.
Is the black line that you have the arrow on now, is that the wall line?
Yes, it's right here. Apologize. And if you can squint really hard, you can see it says proposed 6-foot screen wall, and it's directly leading
Okay.
to that line.
So the trail lies inside the wall?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about the drawing? Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. And
We're
Chairman,
gonna
if-
open the public hearing.
The applicant's here too.
I'm sorry?
I apologize, Chairman. The applicant, Jim Fletcher, is here as well, and I believe his engineer may be in it. No, he's here too as well. So if you have questions for them, they're here. Thank you.
Okay, would we do that in the public hearing portion or now?
Generally speaking, if you wanted a brief presentation or statement from the applicant, it would probably occur now, and then you'd open the public hearing and the residents could come up.
Okay, if Mr. Fletcher and his representative would like to speak, please step forward. State your name and address, please.
Chairman and board here, my name is Jim Fletcher, and I live at 3329 North Road 1 West. Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that.
Thank you.
We feel real, glad that we're able to bring this project to you. The last one we presented to you, we feel this is a transition with that project. Those are bigger spaces, 7,000 square foot density. This moves to smaller units and has the assisted living portion with it. So if there's spouses that end up in the assisted living, the others can stay in the park. So, can I answer any questions you might have?
Anybody have any questions?
I do. Mr. Fletcher, what do you anticipate the space rental for a park unit will be?
We think we're right at the $400 a space.
Okay. And the RV units?
The RV units will be some by the day and some by the week and some by the month, so
Okay.
they'll vary. There's a different tax rate for the RV units if they stay under 30 days, and then
Oh, I see.
over
Okay.
30 is a lesser tax.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody have any more questions? Thank you, sir.
I, I, I
Whoop,
have-
whoop.
I have one, and it might be for your engineer. The 50-foot access in PUE, is that private or public?
That will be for public utilities.
Okay, so that will be dedicated right away?
It won't be dedicated, it'll just be public utility easement for
Okay.
gas and electric and.
So it's gonna
and
be
will-
privately maintained?
It'll be privately maintained.
Thank you.
You bet. And there's 20% open space. I heard that question earlier, so.
All right, let's open up the public hearing portion of the meeting. Item 6A, consideration and possible action regarding an application from Granite Basin Engineering Incorporated / owner Jim Fletcher for a zone change from the existing CL Commercial Light zoning to CL PAD, which is Commercial Light Planned Area Development Overlay zoning, with its associated development plan. The PAD overlay will allow development of the property as an active adult community comprised of an RV park, 55 and older park model development, and assisted living facility for property located at the northeast of State Route 89 and Road 1 South intersection and defined as assessor parcel number 306-29-061 through assessor parcel number 306-29-070. Okay, so first of all, is there anybody in the audience that would like to step forward and speak about this? You step forward, you have 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address. Be concise and polite, please.
Karen Friend, 1960 West Road 4 North. I just have a quick question. If Mr. Fletcher sells this property at some point, either during construction or after construction, would the new owner be able to change it from a 55-plus community to something else?
We're going to let Mr. Sanks, excuse me.
Thank you,
speak to
Chairman.
that.
My last name is usually said incorrectly, so that's fine. That's,
I'm suitably embarrassed.
they would need to amend the planned area development, come back before P&Z and council and hold a neighborhood meeting to remove the 55 and over. It's very specific and it's based in state statute. It will be in the ordinance as well.
So the only way it could change is if it came back before us and we move forward with that change.
That is correct. We would have to amend the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Please state your name and address, please.
Donna Armstrong, 2160 Mojave. I just wondered how big the lots were and how many mobile homes he's going to put in there.
Are we far enough along with the development, site development on that to answer that question?
Yeah, I just don't have my glasses on. 30 by 70 on the space.
Apologize, I can address that. I just wanted to double check with the engineer chairman. I believe the minimum spacing was like 30 by 70 of the spaces, and the number of units is 240 park models, and again, 25 recreational vehicle spaces, so a total of 265.
Okay, so the space, doing some quick math, is 2,100 square feet
Yeah,
per
they're
space?
relatively tiny.
Okay.
May I address you, Chairman? Apparently, in the last iteration of the development plan and in your report, it reflects that there's 25 RV spaces. In fact, they've actually bumped it up. It's 86. So it's 240 park models and 86 RV spaces.
And this is reflected on this site plan here?
Yes, it is.
I can give you a
Good.
little, just a quick little synopsis of the site plan.
If you wouldn't mind stepping up, let everybody know who you are.
Absolutely. Thank you. My name is David Benner. I live at 1985 West Shadow Valley Drive in Prescott, Arizona. As Jason said, we have been working on this site plan for a number of months, and it has evolved quite a bit since originally submitted in response to comments both from staff and the citizen meetings and just planning with Jim and I on the layout. Just to give you a really brief sort of description of what you're seeing here. As Jason pointed out, we have a 70-foot buffer on the north property line that essentially matches what we have to the existing easement to the west. And so we're continuing that across the entire north property line, so that will serve as both regional detention for the project as well as a trail corridor. Along the east property line and south property line, we go to 50, so we essentially maintain a 50-foot drainage and landscape buffer along that entire stretch to buffer the dissimilar zoning of the residential and agriculture to the east. The RV park in the northwest corner, adjacent or behind the hotel, had originally been about half this size as you see on the current site plan. And just to kind of give you a really brief description of this table here, it's basically broken down into 5 different sections: project information, property data, land use data, the design parameters, and then the design calculations. Under land use data section, you can see all the variables that we have listed: density, occupancy, maximum lot coverage for the RV, assisted living, and active adult uses shown on the site plan. So based on that, we're looking at 22 units per acre for the RV, 400 units per acre for the assisted living. Obviously, that's a condensed version. Those aren't lots, of course. Those are essentially rooms or beds. Active adult, we're at 16.3 units per acre. You can see the occupancies there based on published information. It's significantly less than single family, which is occupancy of about 2.5. We're about 1.5 here. And so that has a pretty profound effect on the impacts to infrastructure in general: water, sewer, traffic, roads. And that was presented pretty concisely in the last project we did for you. We didn't really have anything to compare to here because it was a commercial zoning. There's really a lot of different uses that kind of fall into that category. Under the design parameters, you can see here what we're assuming for fire flow, water demand, sewer generation rates, trip generation rates. And under design calculations, you can see what was calculated based on those variables, those design parameters. Under design calculations, we have the acreage of each proposed use, and then the total number of units, and then the population based on that occupancy. Going down, have the same calculations for water and sewer. We're looking at about almost 70 acre feet per year total. Residential, non-residential is about almost 8, for a total of about 77 acre feet per year total water. Sewer generation is about 85% of that, at about 60 acre feet per year. And then trips, your weekly ADT, average daily trip, is 2,700. Your PM peak hour is 219. So if you compare those numbers to commercial light zoning, as I said, there's a number of different uses that sort of fall within there. This is a very small fraction of what would normally be generated by a commercial use. Back to the site plan. As Jason said, we have existing infrastructure in Fletcher Court and Johnson Farm Lane. Those are both privately operated and maintained water and sewer mains. The water is served by a large meter from the city of Prescott in 1 South. Is fed by a meter there. And the sewer is all private on this property. It's a gravity collection system with the outfall in Road 1 East, where it transitions to the town's sewer collection system, and then ultimately to the treatment plant. So those sections, all these mains that you see here, will be privately operated and maintained. They will be public in that they will be treated as and designed, as far as administrative code is concerned, in accordance with a public either distribution water system or a collection system for sewer. So it's no different than a sewer main you would have in the town. It's privately maintained in this case. So off of that main, you can see that we're essentially looping mains where possible for both redundancy, fire flow requirements, and water quality, of course. So, and those will all be 8-inch mains for the most part, possibly 6 in some locations, just to get the fire flow, which is 1,000 GPM. So you got to have at least an 8 typically. For the sewer, same rationale. 8-inch mains is the minimum in the state of Arizona. You can go to 6 if there's no potential for extension in the future. So pretty likely that, or unlikely that anything would be extended beyond this project. But the cost difference between 6 and 8 is really inconsequential. Probably just go ahead and put 8 in everywhere with laterals for each unit or building. The park was relocated originally. That was sort of in the mid portion of what is now shown as the retirement community. It's that little bump out there. We had it down there. So that was relocated more centrally based on staff's recommendation. And so we agree that that's a good location for it as you come in. It's a nice thing to see as you're coming into the project. We have courts in there. You can see the size. It's just over an acre, plenty of room for basketball court, tennis courts, a couple of pickleball courts, possibly even a pool. The RV that you see there, the 86 spaces, that's based on a very generous layout for that, for those spaces. Basically, we've done a number of RV projects, and that's if I'm not mistaken, it's a 14-foot width by, I think it might be a 30 or 40-foot depth with a 16-foot sort of yard in between each paved space. And so that's a very generous, comfortable size for most of the RV units, especially the bigger ones that some of these older folks are buying and living in these days. So you could certainly go denser than that, but we feel that's it's pretty appropriate based on our experience. So the layout you see, it has evolved over the months, and I shouldn't say it's completely nailed down. We think that the uses are pretty much nailed down, but as it's been changing, we haven't gone and completely redone or addressed all the roads and the alignments and everything else. So we do expect to do that, especially in the not the assisted living, the active adult portion, to try to get a little bit more character in there. And so it's not so square. So once we really start taking a hard look at the layout of the units and the spaces, and let me be clear, these are not lots. These are not fee title lots. We're not going to be submitting a plat or recording a plat, at least for that portion. Those will remain under the sole ownership of Mr. Fletcher, and the spaces will be rented. So the spaces, as we go through the different models that'll be available and moved onto those spaces or onto those sites, we do expect those to transform a little bit and evolve a little bit as we go through the planning process. Other than that, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and I'm sorry for the size. It does print to scale on 24 by 36, which we don't have, but if you have a PDF or whatever, you can zoom in there and see it pretty good, and I'm happy to provide any additional information or details if necessary.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Not really a question and not to do with the zoning, but here at the beginning, we're dropping from 300 to 265, and we like the density, and then lo and behold, we jumped 61 RV spaces at the end of the presentation.
Well, that wasn't, the spaces, the density has not increased. We're really downzoning this, no matter how you look at it. If you look at the densities allowed in the commercial light zoning. So all we did here was try to expand that RV section a little bit. We believe there's going to be a bigger demand for that than what was originally contemplated. We had about 2 acres previously. Now we're almost 4. So not to say that that wouldn't be, I don't expect Mr. Fletcher would want to build that entire park in the first phase or all at once. Probably do half and see how it goes. But we do believe that that's appropriate for the demand currently in this area.
Is the size of your RV spaces hard and fast at this point, or are they pull-throughs, or?
They're pull-throughs, yes. And as I said, they're about 14 feet wide, 40 plus feet long, and with all 28-foot radius everywhere. So it's really comfortable to drive through there, even with a fire truck. So we're really, based on our experience, it's really important that you have those really wide, generous spaces and really big turn radii so that it's comfortable maneuvering those big vehicles around.
A 14-foot space doesn't allow me to put my awning out.
Well, we also have 16 feet beyond that. So you have 16 feet is just a paved portion, or excuse me, 14 feet is just a paved portion of the space. So you also have another 16 feet for a total of 30 for that one space.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Do you see at the retirement community down there in the pink, is there going to be access through that for the entire development, or is that just access for the internally? Is it emergency access?
Currently, it's shown, we did have some buildings shown in there, sir. We would expect there to be, at a minimum, an emergency or secondary access there. Okay. But we don't expect that would be a primary access or second access for the retirement community, other than emergency situations.
Good.
Yes, sir?
Just so it's clear in my mind, there's 240 park units and 85 RV units, correct?
I believe it's 86. I'm going to pan over here to the table.
85, 86.
Yeah, so here are the densities, or the total number of units
86.
here. Yeah, so we have 86 in the RV, 723 assisted living, those are basically beds, and then 240 in the active adult.
Okay, so it's 326 spaces that you're going to be developing. And what is this zone for right now?
It's commercial light,
Yeah.
and I
And
don't have it
How
in.
many units were already laid out the last time this was laid out?
The previous, actually what's approved now, Mr. Fletcher might have that, but there was a number of multifamily apartments and among other things that were previously approved by council.
Yeah, in our development agreement, we had 300 apartment units. And then there was some additional office spaces that took in where the campground is.
Oh,
Now, the campground's laid out for 86, but there's a CVID irrigation district easement that runs in that location. So I don't anticipate 86 units. We're gonna have to compensate for that. They want it landscaped over there and a pipe put in and remove the ditch. So there was 300 approved in the development.
plus office and,
Oh, there's quite a bit of office space and a big box store right where the assisted living is. There was a I don't know if we have the existing,
Does that help you?
yeah. Where the assisted living is, there was a big box store there and all the apartments were down. Where the RV is was office spaces.
But we're still talking about less trip generation than what the original.
Oh, yes, sir. We paid for that third lane and that light at 1 South and then negotiated with ADOT with the development agreement that we signed with the town to master plan the traffic. So it's just a little bit, all these uses are allowed in the commercial. We're looking for a development plan approval. And we think the assisted living is huge. We've already had, from the media that's gone out about these meetings, we've already had people contact us, operators that want to be involved in the assisted living. And if you see the part that says not a part, just next to the assisted living,
Yes.
we pulled that out and left that because that might become more assisted living, which is already allowed under the commercial light zoning. But that's why we didn't include it in this, is because we wanted to be able to expand that. We think there's a large need for that in the area.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody have any other questions or concerns?
I do, not a concern, but a question. Somewhere I saw a number for the number of beds.
I mentioned the term bed in the table, the number of units for the assisted living.
There you go.
723?
723?
Yeah, 723. So that's obviously based on a multi-story
Yes.
facility.
Okay. How many stories you think?
I think the maximum building height would be limited by that, so no more than
Oh,
3,
okay.
I believe.
All right.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is off the top of my head. So
I'm thinking it's 30.
okay. So that's a pretty good size facility for assisted living.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
723.
And it's a 2-acre site, if I'm not mistaken, or is it bigger? It is, yeah, almost 2 acres. And so we would expect there to be at least two structures with parking areas sort of on either side of this main. But that would allow for a 10, 20,000 square foot building, which would be more than adequate, multi-story. So
Okay.
we're just trying to cover the bases there as far as what would be expected there. And just to be clear, that assisted living is a permitted use in commercial light. And so we're really just asking for the overlay. If you see, we're asking for the PAD overlay for the retirement community and assisted living. So we're actually asking for a dual overlay there, if that makes any sense. We expect it to be an assisted living, but if it doesn't work out, then we would expect it to be part of the, or swallowed into the retirement community portion here.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Anybody else in the public like to speak? Ma'am, step up to the microphone, state your name and address, please.
My name's Judy Powell. I live 553 Sycamore Lane. I live in Rancho Vista Grande, off of 1 South. 1 South is not a wide road. My concern is when I drive to go north to Safeway, and I come up there to where they're doing the development, and you say there's a wall, you got RVs and any cars that want to go to Prescott at the 1 South light will have to come out of there constantly. We even have trouble where I do, even with the bank people coming in and out of there. So my concern is the traffic. If they want to go north, then they can go out the back way by Days Inn. But if they're going to go to Prescott, there's no left turn on that road that goes by Days Inn. You have to turn right.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going to go to Prescott from that development, they'll be coming in and out of that road a lot. And with that wall, it might be difficult for them to see if cars are coming up or the person coming up to the Highway 89, if they'll be able to spot them before they pull out. I don't know how, you just said the wall's 6 foot?
Yes, ma'am. That's a great comment, by the way. She's referring to site visibility
Yes.
here. And so what I would suggest and what would be we would be more than happy to do would be to actually identify a site triangle here to
Yes.
allow that. Now, what's even more concerning, really, from a site distance perspective, is the fact that there's a high point here, and so that's really what's limiting your site distance as you're approaching the highway there. So that's already a concern. The bank actually paid for the turn lanes, the existing turn lanes on Road 1 South, National Bank of Arizona, and Mr. Fletcher, as you know, essentially financed all of the other turn lane improvements along the highway. So as far as the functionality of traffic safety improvements, what is there now was developed and installed based on a much more intense use. So I don't expect that to be an issue, but to her point, absolutely we would encourage or even pull that wall back as necessary to improve sight distance there. But again, it's really more of a concern with that high point than anything else, especially as you're approaching rapidly westbound towards the highway.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you for the comments.
Sir?
Do you have another one?
No,
What?
I was just going to state also the street isn't wide enough for the big swing of RVs as they're coming out. Because like I said, 1 South is not that wide.
Absolutely, and so this radius, I believe that's a 28-foot radius right there now. So that is pretty generous. At some point in the future, I would expect there to be some widening of 1 South further. It's possible we could look at expanding this 3rd lane, at least to this entry. I think that would satisfy her concerns. May not be necessary or warranted based on the number of trips, but for traffic safety and whatnot, I think it's something that we'd be willing to consider.
Thank you.
Darren Mahoney, 1629 Bumblebee Drive. I just have a couple concerns. I've been to a few of these meetings and I kind of see what goes on and I'm learning a lot about it. I got two questions. 3. The RV thing, there's a lot of inconsistencies with this plan up here, with the gentleman coming up and reading all that stuff, but I hear a lot of different inconsistencies and numbers from each, different people. The RV park isn't a pull-through. You can tell by the drawing on there. It's just trailers just backed up to each other, or RVs or whatever you have, so that's not right. So there's not pull-through. So with the different numbers, with the, from 240 to 86 RVs, now we're at 326, we were at 265. My concern is when this gets passed or this is okayed, is this the end all of the plans, or is this going to be changed and does it have to be okayed by you guys at another time? Second, just one last one, you can answer it after that. I've been learning a lot about this master plan. First, when I started coming to these meetings, I thought it was like the grand scheme of what everybody wants. So I'm asking you guys, for someone who doesn't know, how do we get a hold of that master plan, and when does that master plan come up? I mean, it seems like a lot of this stuff is going to go anyways because it's been in the works for a while. So where do I find out about the master plan and what is, what's in store for the future of Chino Valley, as well as what we can do in the future to, have our input on that?
Kane, you got a 3rd question?
Thank you for letting me be here today.
You're welcome. Couple of things that I'd like, Jason, if you'd come up, because I think you can answer quite a bit of that.
Thank you, Chairman. In regards to the last 2 questions, I guess I'll start from end to beginning, since it's on my memory. I believe the gentleman was referring to the Town of Chino Valley General Plan, which was recently updated, I believe, in 2014. It's typically updated in every 10 years, but we can amend it through minor general plan amendments anytime. So, yes, the property in question is in conformance with that general plan designation of the multifamily commercial designation on the property.
Where is that general plan available? I think that was one of his questions.
Exactly. It's on the chinoez.net website, and you can go under, I believe, under the planning page. It's in any number of the drop downs you can find it. It's actually on the front page as well. And I did want to say to the chair that there was a discrepancy on the unit count between a plan change. We recently had the plan updated to include a data table because it did not prior to this really have a data table on it. In the course of getting the data table added, we now know that the RV park portion changed in size. So I spoke with Mr. Fletcher. If there's a concern with the overall density now being at 326, he would be amenable to the commission should usually move to reduce the density on the park model units from 240 to 200 and drop it by 40 units.
And I think Mr. Fletcher did mention that there was some sort of a right-of-way for the irrigation district that would not allow this to be developed as drawn, am I correct?
It's in the RV section, which is that's zoomed in right now in the yellow. He's saying that he's asking for the ability to have up to 86 units, but because of the restrictions with that district with not being able to park the units on top of it, it needs to be lightly landscaped, that it may end up being less.
And that would reduce the density there, or?
It would reduce the density further if he couldn't make the configuration, make it work with the 14-foot spaces and the 16-foot side yards.
Okay, and also to address the question about, is this the final drawing? I'm assuming you still have quite a bit of design work to do on this project as far as the plot is concerned.
Chairman, that is correct. The actual street layout is going to need to generally conform with this. Certainly the land uses where they're designated need to stay static, but the street circulation could change slightly as they get into the improvement plan stage, which is where you really get into what your limitations or needs are. But it wouldn't change. Things that don't change in that process would be the overall unit count for any one of these types of uses. So the RVs would be maxed at the number that you see or limit it to. Same with the park models. You could state, you could move, the commission could move to reduce that number in its recommendation to council if they feel like the unit count is too high.
Thank you.
Sure.
My apologies on the full through. You're right. They're obviously not. Okay. I should have looked up before I said that.
Sir, would you like to speak?
Name is Pete Mensing, 4905 West Cougar Rock Road. I represent the Methodist Church. On the east side there's an irrigation ditch. Will that be affected? And also, in relation to that irrigation ditch, where will the wall be? How many feet between the irrigation ditch if it is not moved to the wall? Thank you.
Thank you. Jason?
And Chairman, I may need the engineer to address the irrigation ditch. What I'd like to do is zoom out of this plan so that people can actually see it. Hold on one second.
Maybe the photograph of the whole area there might show the ditch.
You know what I'll do? If you don't mind, Chairman, I will switch over to the presentation.
There you go.
There we go.
Thank you.
The irrigation ditch here, you can see there's actually two. This one here, which sort of courses through the, I guess it would be the east side of the park, the extreme east side of the park, and then the RV area. So that's what Jim's referring to there. The other irrigation ditches along here, adjacent to the church property, that ditch is actually on Mr. Fletcher's property. We would expect the wall to be on the east side of the ditch, so that, if that makes any sense, sir.
So the irrigation ditch would be on is on Mr. Fletcher's property, but the fence would conceal it from the
Correct.
Methodist Church.
That's correct. That's the intent.
The wall will be on the church side of the ditch.
Correct. Yes, sir.
By how much?
Not very much, because the ditch is pretty close to the property line. So we would have that wall just set back, a foot from the property line. Do you require access or something to the ditch, or?
No, we need no access.
Okay.
We're not part of the irrigation district.
Understood. It would conceal the ditch from your property.
Right on the edge of the ditch, on the east side.
Essentially, yes. And as I understand, those facilities, as I'm sure you know, there's a significant amount of losses of water due to evaporation and infiltration and whatnot. So I think the district is in the process of, where they can, trying to put those in closed conduits, pipes and whatnot to, to minimize that as much as possible. So more than likely, when this is all said and done, that'll actually be a pipe. It will not be an open ditch. Yeah, and it'll be underground by the time we're done with it. Well, inverted siphon. We can do that. I'm an engineer.
You would need to access our property then to build that wall?
No, I don't believe so, sir.
You're exactly right. They've asked us to put the ditch in a pipe.
Please step up to the microphone so that we can hear you. Thank
The
you.
CVAD has asked us has told us to put the ditch in a pipe and then landscape.
So basically, all of the irrigation ditches that are on the property are going to be in underground piping before the project is done?
The way they've asked us to do it, yes. We haven't said we weren't going to do that, but they've told us if we're going to develop anywhere around them, we need to put them in a pipe and then landscape over them.
Okay, and you're agreeable to do that?
I am. I'm still a CVID shareholder. And
Okay.
I understand I said, I deal with that too during the day, so I understand their issues.
Okay, thank you. Did that make sense to you? Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Bless you. Okay, so seeing no other public speaking volunteers, we'll close the public portion of the meeting for this item. And do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, just a comment. I agree with Mr. Fletcher on the density thing. I'd love to see that come down 20 units, or 40 units down to 300, or 200, pardon me.
200, I made a note of that. Okay, so as far as we're concerned, we're saying that the 200 unit density for the mobile, or for the park models would be our preferred density number.
As far as I'm concerned, yes, sir.
Any of the commissioners have any comments on that?
The only comment that I would add is that this was presented to us a month ago for us, a preliminary review, and I think it was most helpful. And perhaps it could serve as a guideline on some of these future developments to give us a little more time to look at it and to develop the questions and the stands that we might have.
I would concur with that. At least the more opportunities we get to see it before we get to this point, the better off us folks up here feel about that. So we can visit with town staff about that a little bit at some point.
I think town staff was proposing the study session and a voting session.
And I believe you're correct. Has been talked about. So we're looking forward to that. Okay, any other comments about this?
Mr. Chairman, just going back to reducing the number of spaces, what would we expect the property owner to do with the space that's left now? Is he just going to make his lots bigger or reduce?
That's a good question.
Can I still speak?
Go ahead, Mr. Fletcher.
By increasing the RV portion, that would reduce the
So you're just.
We're trading
Yeah.
one for the
Yeah.
others,
Yeah,
basically
equal.
what you're
Yeah.
asking us to do.
Thank
Your
you.
feeling is that the RV park would probably be a faster growing part of the project?
I am. The franchises that we've visited with, including KOA and some of the others, they won't allow 25 units. You have to have more than that. Some of them have 75 as a cutoff. So we have to adjust that a little bit if we have to reduce the other part a little bit. So.
Thank you.
What about widening for future use of Road 1 South, getting a little extra right away there?
I guess the question is, from one of the commissioners, is there's an area of 1 South that I've heard some concerns expressed about the width of the road. I think all of us share that a little bit.
And we already have the plans for that. That was submitted. That was a requirement once this developed. 1 South is widened all the way back to Johnson Farm Lane. So any traffic comes out, it'd be in that area there, right just to the east of the bank.
Has there been any comments about widening the eastern part of your project along 1 South?
There has been no comment about widening down 1 South because it just narrows up so much that,
Right, and
you know.
to be fair to you, it's been that narrow like that. From your project backwards going east, it's narrow all the way down the road, so.
It is, yeah.
Your project isn't causing it to be narrower.
Right, and we will widen from Johnson Farm Lane up toward the bank, where we widened to the bank, then buried those utilities when they put the highway through. And there's a pole there, and we'll have to bury the electric down further also.
Okay,
So,
thank you. Any other questions? Okay. No questions from the council or from the commission. I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Commissioner, I move to recommend approval to Town Council of this request to rezone Chino Valley Town Center from the existing CL Commercial Light zoning to CL Pad Commercial Light Planned Area Development Overlay for approximately 25.63 acres of real property located approximately 545 feet east from the northeast corner of East Road 1 South and State Route, along with its associate development plan with the following conditions. Number 1, the developer shall provide a 6-foot wall on the eastern property line of the project. And number 2, the reduction in density of park units from 240 units to 200 units.
Also add that right there, the triangle section.
And that the wall, the 6-foot wall shall be reduced accordingly to a site vision triangle as approved by city ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, now, do we have any discussion on this motion? In other words, did we cover all of the things that were concerns in the motion?
I think I have a comment. Well, I have a comment. I don't think I have a comment. One of the reasons that I find this development attractive is the assisted living facility. Because if I'm a baby boomer, as I am, coming from another state to retire here and I want to bring my mother, who by the way is now living with me because there is no place for her to live in Chino Valley, then that would be very attractive to me. If I want to buy a house in Molly Ray or acreage out off of Reed Road, I would have a place for my elderly parent to stay. We don't have anything like that now. And a lot of us are going to need it soon because what is our population? More than 50% retirees, I think, at one point I heard. It's pretty high, whatever it is, people over 55. And so we need to think about that. It may not affect us now, but 20 years from now, I'll be there. 10 years from now, I'll be there maybe, or next week. You just don't know.
Any other comments, discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Okay, moving forward to item 6B. Thank you, folks, for your comments, and also Mr. Fletcher and his engineer for your help tonight. Moving forward to item 6B, consideration of possible action regarding an application from Mayday Consulting, PLLC, owner Jeffrey D. Wilson, / owner Jeffrey D. Wilson for a zone change from the existing AR5 agricultural residential 5-acre minimum to SR2 single-family residential 2-acre minimum for property located approximately 744 feet south of the southeast corner of East Center Street and South Road 1 East, addressed 185 South, Road 1 East, and defined as assessor parcel number 306-25-002 S as in Sam. Alex?
Good evening, Chair, Commission. Before you, you have a proposal for a zone change. The applicant has applied and is requesting a zone change from the existing agriculture residential 5-acre minimum to a reduced zoning of single-family residential 2-acre minimum. The property is identified here, highlighted in yellow, is located approximately 744 feet south of the southeast corner of East Center Street and South Road 1 East, identified with address 185 South Road East 1. Sorry, 185 South Road 1 East. As you can see here, the project is near Chino Valley Town Center, in between Chino Valley Town Center, the project that we just presented, and Chino Valley High School to the north. The parcel is identified as 5 acres, 5.78 acres, is identified with a land use designation of medium density residential in the general plan. Currently, there's a residence in the property. Here we have the surrounding zoning map. This reflects, somewhat reflects what the general plan is. We have commercial over here, as well as over here, commercial light, agriculture, residential, but we see more of a low dense zoning area around here. We have agriculture residential 5-acre minimum, a low density over here to the west and to the east of the subject property. And abutting it, there's a zoning of single-family residential 1-acre minimum. The reason for the applicant is requesting the zone change is to reduce or do a split of the lots. One of them is gonna reflect 2 acres, and the one to the south is gonna reflect that of 3 acres. This is the land survey that the applicant has attached with the application. As you see here, just something that's a little bit more clear that'll help you out to visualize exactly what the proposal of the lot split will be like. We've discussed this matter several times in the past that have to do with properties that are requesting a zone change in order for them to go forward with a lot split. This is one of them as well. In the past, we've discussed the limitations and restrictions of a lot split. Just to summarize a little bit, that we've discussed in the past, that in order for an applicant to go forward with a lot split, he's gonna have to meet the new minimum lot frontage of the new zoning. In this case, it's gonna be a single-family residential 2-acre minimum zoning. They're gonna have to make sure that all buildings, that the lot split does not create legal non-conforming use buildings or non-conforming buildings created by the lot split, and that they meet the new development standards of the new zoning district, as well as that parcels need to have legal access on a legal street or a public street. As you see here, the development standards for single-family residential 2-acre minimum. The lot frontage requires 100 square foot of lot frontage. The parcel to the north is reflecting that. It has 102 feet of lot frontage. Parcel to the south is going to create a flag lot, as identified in the staff report. It reverts you back to the Unified Development Ordinance, section 4.5.10.a, that stipulates the requirements and the standards of that of creating a flag lot. Just to summarize quickly, that the pot handle right here has to be at least 50 feet of width and cannot exceed 330 feet of length of the pot handle. As we see here, the pot handle is measured that of 192 feet. So she's meeting that standard there, or the applicant is meeting that standard there. By analyzing this and analyzing the request of the applicant, there's a few conclusions that we need to make. Even though we see here that this lot abutting the subject parcel to the west, and then the one to the south over here, and then the one abutting Chino Valley Center. These three parcels here, although they have a AR5 zoning on it, that is not the size of the actual parcel. The agriculture residential 5-acre minimum zoning basically states that the parcel needs to be at least 5 acres to have that zoning. And that is not the case for these parcels. I believe this one is about an acre, probably almost 2 acres, and the same with this parcel, and the same with this parcel. I believe this is actually 2 acres. So we see here 3 parcels that need to reflect somewhat of a single-family residential 2.5 acre minimum. So we see here that by creating that, by zoning this to 2 acres, it's not necessarily going to be what is called a spot zoning, but is going to reflect that of other adjacent parcels. By having a single-family residential 2 acre minimum here, this parcel, or these 2 parcels that are going to be created, are going to serve as a transition between the 5 acre, a low density to a medium density, to a lower density over here, or to a higher density, sorry. So you'll see, so this will serve as a transitional density parcel. Analyzing the zone change as well, staff analyzed that the proposed zone change is not going to have a negative impact on the surrounding properties as well. And staff recommends approval of the proposed zone change from the 5 acre minimum to the single-family residential 2 acre minimum. Yes, sir.
Would you go back 4 screens, please? Add that one.
This one.
Okay. I think it's just a typo where it says SR1, single-family residence. It says 2.5 acres. I think that should be 1 acre.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then the next one. Go.
Next parcel?
Yeah, that one. And SR2, minimum lot size should be 2.0 instead of 2.5?
That's correct.
Okay. That's just for clarification, otherwise there would have been a problem with
Yes,
this approval.
those are typos. Thank you for clearing
Okay.
it. Thank you for noting that.
Thank you. Those are the only.
Anybody have
Good
any
catch.
questions for
Good catch.
Alex? Thank you, Gary, for your eyeball.
We can change that as we speak.
Maybe I just read it wrong. Maybe I read it wrong the first time.
Didn't sound like it. So
Thank
there's
you.
no questions for Alex? Thank you, Alex.
No.
Would the owner or the owner's representative like to speak? There's a familiar face.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ruth Mayday, as you all know. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Jeff Wilson to split his land, essentially, and build another home on the 2 acre parcel. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Anybody have any questions for Mrs. Mayday?
I really don't. It's a pretty simple lot split, as far as I can see.
I could complicate it if you'd like.
Well,
No.
I'm kind of tired, so that may not work.
Actually, this is one easy one, so
Thank you, Ruth.
thanks.
All right. If there's any questions, discussion, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Commissioner, I move that we recommend approval to Town Council of this request to rezone approximately 5.78 acres. Am I reading the right thing?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Acres of real property located approximately 744 feet south of the southeast corner of East Center Street and South Road 1 East at 185 South Road 1 East from AR5 agricultural residential 5-acre minimum to SR2 single family residence 2-acre minimum.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We're going to item 7. Thank you, folks. Going to item 7, non-public hearing action items. I don't believe we have any of those this evening. Okay, moving forward to item 8, discussion items. Anybody have anything to discuss? Okay, this is the portion of the meeting for the public to have an opportunity to address the commission within the jurisdiction of the commission that's not on the agenda. Public comment is encouraged. Individuals are limited to speak for 3 minutes. Anybody have any desire to speak about anything that's not on the agenda? We'll move forward to...
There's a hand, Mr. Chairman.
Whoops, I'm sorry. Didn't miss you.
I'll make this brief. I came
Please
in late,
state
so
your
I
name and
apologize.
address.
I will. Commission, my name is Frank Marbury. I'm the new Public Works Director. And I just wanted to introduce myself and say hello.
Well,
So
thank you, sir.
If you have anything, just let me know.
I'm sure we'll have lots of questions at some point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
My name is Robert Schoon. I live at 1498 West Road 4 North. Sorry, I'm new. Kind of. I just had a question. I keep hearing about the 55 and over communities. Are there any plans for any hospitals or medical facilities coming to Chino Valley? Or is there any effort to try and attract a hospital or medical facilities here? It just seems like everybody's planning for retirement here, and there's not really any infrastructure for that. So that's just a question.
Yeah, can I answer that in part?
I don't know if we can
comment?
answer
Can I
that
comment
directly.
on it?
What we may do is ask Jason if he has any information on that.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. At this, this is a reoccurring theme that comes up, is the availability of health and medical services in Chino. We don't currently have any applications pending, even in feasibility, for a large-scale medical facility, but we do hear that quite often that we need it.
Just to ask the question that I think maybe was unasked, we certainly encourage all that.
Certainly do. And I believe, our finance director and we're kind of in the search now, perhaps for an economic development director. Those people would be critical in reaching out into the industry leaders to try to draw that in.
I have
Mr.
one-
Chairman.
I have one comment on that.
After the commissioner.
I was at a meeting about 2 months ago.
Excuse me, if we can't discuss
can't
this
comment
item
on
under
this
call
part.
to the
Okay.
public.
We can
Yeah,
only
you guys can
tell
bring
the
it back to the
staff
next
to do
meeting if
things.
you want to.
Chairman, we can make it an agenda item if you'd like, as a discussion item that's agendized for the next meeting.
That would be good, thank you. Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to stand up and say anything? We're limited by law that we can't directly comment on any of these things, only that we can only let the town staff know that this might be something that you folks would be interested in, and it can be put on the agenda for the next meeting. Sir? Then in case anybody didn't recognize, this is our mayor sitting in on tonight. Been very fortunate to have lots of audience here this evening. Okay, any more public comments? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.